Hello and welcome to this little channel of mine. Now before I say another word, I do have just one question for you. Do you remember?
Do you remember?
Oh, sorry, stupid bit. I don't think I've ever done that before though, when September hits on this channel. But also, look at my nails. I know that we were already celebrating, but now it is kind of like officially spooky season. It's Halloween. If you're a regular though, I mean, we celebrate Halloween all year round, and if that sounds good to you and you're new here, then click subscribe. I talk about horror movies year round, so also click the like button, the notification bell, that way you'll never miss the next video when I'm talking about the next great horror film. Today is sort of like the last summertime video that I'll be releasing on the main channel, don't worry. But I do have a lot of new horror movies to talk about today. We are recapping August, so I'm gonna start with all the TV shows that I've been watching and then get into all the non-horror movies. Then we get into like my horror rewatches, so I kind of just blow through those first few categories. Then we talk about all my new watches of old horror, all the classics I'm catching up on. And then finally we get into new releases. So if that sounds good, then stick around. For TV shows, I am currently mid-season 5 for Riverdale. They did a weird 7-year time jump thing. Wasn't really into it at first, took a little break. Now I'm, back into it. I'm committed. I'm gonna finish the show. I hear that witchcraft gets involved at some point, so I have to stick it out. I also finished the first season of Down for Love on Netflix. I ended up not really enjoying that show as much as Love on the Spectrum and Love on the Spectrum Australia. I find that Love on the Spectrum, both versions of the show, are edited a bit more coherently. I'm not a super big fan of the structure of Down for Love, but I probably would watch a second season. Then the last 3 shows I want to talk about, actually I watched all the pilot episodes of in a single night. I had a candle making date with a friend because they really wanted to show me a bunch of anime. So we watched Spy Family, Cherry Magic, and Castlevania. Castlevania is the only horror related one, and it was a little bit serious for me. I was surprised it actually ended up being my least favorite of all of them, because if you're new here, I've never really been into anime before. I love animated films, I love animation as a medium, but just never really thought that anime was for me, and I was wrong, because Spy Family was really cute and it was super funny, and then Cherry Magic was my favorite of those 3. It's about this 30-year-old virgin who, because he was a 30-year-old virgin, he had the superpower of being able to touch somebody and read their thoughts, and it's about this kind of in-office crush romance that blossoms. I got really hooked after the first episode. I'm probably gonna binge the whole thing. So yeah, guess who's an anime girly now? There's another one that I really want to try that I guess falls within the horror genre, and it's called Mononoke, and apparently the animation style of it is really trippy, and I think it would kind of be more up my alley than Castlevania. I'm not sure. If you have any recommendations, let me know. As far as non-horror goes, I finished the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise because this week actually I'm releasing a giant spoiler-filled ranking of the franchise with my dad. That is going up over on the Patreon, so yay, support us over there. So that video is 46 minutes long. If you're into that franchise, go have nuts. Go have nuts. Go have fun. Go nuts. But next up would be The Butterfly Effect. I somehow had never seen this one. Popular early 2000s psychological thriller film. I'm gonna try to explain the synopsis just based on my memory today. That sounds fun. So Ashton Kutcher stars as this man who has the power to time travel using his journals. He can go back to specific points in time and change everything. So he uses his power to go back and correct bad moments in his life. And it's insane. That movie's insane. It's crazy. It's doing a bit too much. I thought that it was delicious garbage. It's pretty bad. A lot of people do unironically think that it's a really good movie, and no shade. I'm at a loss for words. Ashton Kutcher, that man is a piece of work, but he, I think, could have been a really good actor had he maintained the trajectory with roles like this. I definitely would watch it again. It is the exact type of flavor of early 2000s stank that I really enjoy. But it's not good, you guys. It's not a good movie. Anyways, let's move on. Next up would be The Crow. I didn't really really know whether or not I should put this in the horror category. To me, it's definitely like more dark fantasy drama. I don't know. I don't like to split hairs. Maybe it is a horror movie. I don't think you need a synopsis for this one. This is the movie where famously Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, tragically passed away on set. And the new one with Bill Skarsgård just came out, which I'll be talking about that, I'm sure, either on Patreon or in my September recap. Not really looking forward to it, by the way. The original Crow is just not super my cup of tea. That kind of vibe is not my jam. I love a gothic movie, but more in the vein of like Crimson Peak, you know? Less so in the revenge subgenre. And I think I'm pretty particular with comic book movies. Like I need them to, honestly, I need them to be like a little bit more accessible. But I really like, you know, I mean, okay, I'm a Marvel girl, but I really like the Christopher Nolan Batman films. I really enjoy the Matt Reeves Batman film, but I'd be pretty hard pressed to think of like another comic book film that I really enjoyed. So I don't know. I think that I'm kind of picky with that kind of stuff. It was a good movie, but not one that I'd be like jumping to rewatch or anything. Next up is Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. This one is a mouthful, but it is, I'm pretty sure, the feature debut of Elizabeth Olsen. I wanted to say Mary Kate really bad. This just follows a girl who is a recent escapee of a cult as she gets reconnected with her sister and her sister's husband. She's staying with them and kind of relearning how to integrate into society and unpacking her past. This movie was definitely upsetting, okay? Trigger warnings for themes of assault and all that kind of culty stuff. Unfortunately, even though this movie starred some of my absolute faves, like Sarah Paulson is there. Oh, Hugh Dancy is there. I love him so much. Whether it be from my childhood, Ella Enchanted, or in Hannibal later on. Oh, that man, love him. But the movie was just nothing spectacular for me. It's not one that I would ever rewatch. It was worth watching to see everybody's performances and stuff. Like 3 stars is not a bad rating. I didn't feel that they went that deep into her unpacking, like, you know, like de-brainwashing herself from the cult. They didn't get far enough into that to where I really understood who she was as a character. I would have been more curious about who she was before she joined the cult. Like, you get to kind of unravel the relationship that she had with her sister, so you kind of explore it that way, but not enough. Like, the movie is too long for how little character work it does, I feel. So moving on, I rewatched the original Deadpool and really didn't like it. And I was like, I guess that's probably a good thing because I thought that this movie was hilarious when I was like 14 or 15. Go figure. So I wasn't too broken up about that. I was like, I would hope my humor would have evolved in the last decade. But then I also finally watched the sequel for the very first time. I had never seen it, and it also was bad, but I did enjoy it a little bit more than the original movie. I only give it 2.5 stars, but I still gave it a little heart because I did enjoy myself. That was to prep for going to see Deadpool and Wolverine. I did end up finally getting out to see that one in theaters. Sorry I'm so late on it, but I also think that I might want to talk about that with my dad over on Patreon. Like, I want to really unpack the whole release, reception, like how it's going to affect the greater culture and everything. I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time with Deadpool and Wolverine. I liked it so much more than the first 2 Deadpool movies. I thought that, first of all, it just was way funnier. Like, I don't know if it's because now Daddy Kevin Feige was in charge of everything and they couldn't be, well, no, they got really raunchy with it. But it mostly was in service of being like, look how hot Hugh Jackman is. And to me, that was a little bit more fun. And Hugh Jackman was one of the funniest things about the movie. Like, oh, I love him so much. There were some things about the movie that were just very tired. Like, a lot of the humor still was really low-hanging fruit. That's just not really my jam. But I ended up enjoying a lot of the cameos. Some of them were kind of whatever. It was just sort of like typical fun fare. I don't think they're ever going to get back to the quality of where we were at with Marvel 5 years ago, but I think this was just about as close as we could get. Just in terms of the fact that I had a really, really fun time, would rewatch. I enjoy how it like fits into the larger narrative. So yeah, that one was a win for me. 2 more non-horror movies to talk about. I also rewatched National Treasure and The Parent Trap. Both of these movies are insane. They're from a somewhat similar era for Disney. I believe that the early 2000s was when that company was in its absolute prime. It was the golden era in terms of their live action films, because that also was when they were releasing Pirates of the Caribbean. National Treasure is so absurd. I love it so much. When I was a kid, I was so obsessed with all the little like spy type things that they would do, like lifting a fingerprint and then using that to get into the secret room, or him like cutting himself to like reveal the message on that pipe. I was like, girl, why didn't you just use ink or something? But I had a lot of fun with that one. And then The Parent Trap, I dare I say, is even more insane than National Treasure. Well, no, I mean National Treasure, I remember how emotionally patriotic that movie made me feel as a child. Disney is never beating the propaganda allegations, but The Parent Trap is, I urge you to rewatch that movie if you haven't since you were a child. It is excellent. Like, that movie is hilarious, but it's off the walls. Absolutely nothing makes sense, and I feel like that's why I love it so much. But the most egregious thing, the reason why I give it 4.5 stars and not 5, is because of Chessie and Martin's relationship. Why couldn't they just be like besties? You know, we got the lesbian and we got the gay butler. Just have them like kiki together or whatever. Like, have them become besties. I'm sorry, that's such a big spoiler. Whatever. That movie's 25 years old, so you'll get over it. Still love that movie. Oh, I love it so much. Now let's get on to all my horror rewatches of the month. It's just a lot of classics, so I'm kind of just gonna blow through these. But I do a lot of watch-alongs on this channel, so recently we marathoned the entire Evil Dead franchise together. If you want access to those, you do have to join the Patreon, because they always get copyright issues on YouTube, and so they get re-uploaded to the top tier on Patreon, or rather the top tier of bonus content. I rewatched Alien to prepare for Alien Romulus. Go check out my Alien Romulus review. Rewatched A Nightmare on Elm Street, just a classic. I've already rewatched that once this year, a couple months ago. Rewatched Don't Breathe, and I had not seen that since it came out in theaters when I was a teenager, and I was like, ooh, 4.5 stars. This movie is down and dirty, and my god, do I love Fede Alvarez. I rewatched Hereditary because in the next 2 weeks, my big Hereditary deep dive is coming out. If you're into really juicy deep dives, then stick around. Rewatched Friday the 13th, and to be honest, I rewatched Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street with my boyfriend because I'm prepping him to finally watch Scream for the first time. He needed to do a little bit of homework first, right? Rewatched Beetlejuice to prepare for the new one, and I still don't like that movie. Like, I give it 3 stars. You know, I enjoyed it a lot more than my first time watch of it, and I did talk to the same friend that I was making candles with. They were like, well, Michael Keaton's character is supposed to be just the epitome, like the end of late stage bravado, late stage masculinity, if you will. And I was like, that's a good read of it. I hadn't thought of that before, but it doesn't change the fact that whenever he's on screen, I'm deeply annoyed and just like not enjoying myself. It's the polar opposite to American Psycho, where that one feels so much more self-aware and is actually funny. I think for me, Beetlejuice is just a little bit too cartoonish with how it handles it. I don't feel like it's self-critical enough, where obviously American Psycho, that's the whole point of the movie. We also rewatched Drag Me to Hell. I've seen The Light. I think that's almost a perfect film. I love it so much now. In the past, the first time that I watched it, I gave it 2 stars. Can you imagine? How embarrassing for me. But I loved it so much. I'm so excited that Sam Raimi is finally working on another original horror right now. I'm pretty sure that's his next film. Yes, I would have loved to see him take over the Marvel franchise and do the next big Marvel films, because Doctor Strange was so much fun, but a little part of me is kind of glad, because I'm like, yes girl, get back to horror please. Anyway, I also showed Scott Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. That one is fun. I enjoyed it more than my first watch. I was pretty lukewarm on it the first time, and I still only give it 3.5 stars, but it is really fun. It's gonna be such a good sleepover movie for my kids. Oh my god. Oh, I also had rewatched the first 4 movies of the Alien franchise, but I rewatched Aliens through Alien Resurrection after seeing Alien Romulus. That's why I was kind of like broken up. And you guys, like, I'm gonna be ranking the franchise soon, but Resurrection is so fucking misunderstood. But more on that later. Let's get into my new watches of old horror. First up, we have The Orphanage, presented by Guillermo del Toro. This is a Spanish horror film. This follows Laura, who has happy memories of her childhood in an orphanage. So then later in life, she convinces her husband to buy the place so they can open it up and take several children in. One day her son disappears, and because he is severely ill, everyone else kind of gives up, but this movie is about her trying to find him again. It is a supernatural film at that too. This is unfortunately another example of me, I guess, just not being that much of a Del Toro girly. To be clear, he did not direct it, but even the movies he produces, they're just like, they're a little bit too overly sappy. I don't know if it's just because it is a Mexican film and it gives off kind of like that telenovela vibe. Okay, I think that this actually was a collaboration between a Spanish and a Mexican studio, but it was distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures Spain. Anyway, not the point, but I've never been into like super dramatic things like that. I don't really enjoy melodrama. I feel like that's also why I've never been super into anime, because so much of it is just like so over the top that it doesn't really click with my emotions. And the same thing happened with The Orphanage. Even though it wasn't incredibly over the top, it just was a little bit too fantastical for my taste. I'm gonna hang on to my physical media because I do want to try to give it a redemption rewatch at some point. I feel like maybe it'll resonate a little bit more when I am a mother myself. So I don't want to give up on it yet. It was a 3-star experience, you know, no regrets. I would recommend it because you will probably like it more than I did. Just wasn't super my cup of tea. Next up we have It's Alive. This is a little bit of like an underground 70s cult classic. This movie came out in 1974 and it follows this couple of parents as they are welcoming a new baby into the world. But when they head to the hospital for its birth, she ends up not giving birth to a human, but rather to this mutant creature that kind of just starts killing everything. So it was super fun at first. I was really into the first act of the film, and then it got a little too police procedural, a little less exciting. Like it wasn't really enough to keep me gripped. I understand the appeal of this one. It came out around the time of like second wave feminism and stuff, so the themes were really applicable to the time period. And so on that level, it was interesting to me, but watching it 50 years later, it just didn't really have that much of a profound impact on me. This is a conversation we've been having for so goddamn long, and we're having it again right now, that a lot of people react to this movie and feel like it is so like ahead of its time, so deep, whatever. It just didn't really hit me that hard. Like, I enjoyed myself, you know, it's worth watching. It's the same director as The Stuff, Larry Cohen, and I really enjoyed The Stuff a lot more than this one, but I think it is worth the one-time watch. It's kind of an underrated little 70s gem. Next up though, this one's a lot more serious. Class of 1984. I feel like this is the movie that earns all of the praise that It's Alive gets, actually. Class of 1984 almost feels like a slice of life film. It's not super plot heavy, but it's about a teacher who is brand new to this school that's in a more low income area, and it is about the rise of fascist youth. It's sort of like the polar opposite of what you would see coming out of the 70s. Reagan era movies, Reagan era horror is just on a whole other level, because on one hand you have movies like The Stuff that I just mentioned that are very lighthearted, but they're poking fun at extremely serious issues like FDA regulation rollbacks, but it's still really fun and like over the top and silly and whatever. Then Class of 1984 is very much an exploitation film. When I started the movie and I see this teacher who's really well intentioned and there are these really vile students that he's just like trying to get under control, I thought that it was going to be more about them learning to coexist and, oh, he's such a great teacher and they're gonna come together. And I could not have been more wrong about that. This movie was way too intense for me. It is a really good film, but I don't think that I rated it very highly just because I personally did not enjoy it. But that doesn't mean that like I didn't absorb what the movie was trying to send my way. It just was way too tough of a watch, so it's never going to be a rewatch for me. I think that it is a really important historical text. Scream Factory, as far as I know, is the only one that's done a release of the film on physical media, and I don't know where it's streaming, but I would highly recommend looking that up just because the themes from that movie are eerily similar to how I feel history is repeating itself currently. I don't know if you've ever considered this or looked into this, but it's really interesting to me right now. Well, not interesting, it's actually terrifying how young men men now are so much more susceptible to falling down like right-wing rabbit holes, and obviously like women are becoming a lot more progressive because we have to, because y'all are trying to take away our rights. Nowadays that funnel is propelled by, you know, like online content, usually people that are like terminally online. So Class of 1984 is exploring kind of how that happened back then, and it's a terrifying film. Like it's a tough watch. I can recommend it with caution. I personally will not be revisiting it. Next up, Lake Sunshine 1989. This is a lot more lighthearted. This is a short film that came out of Norway, actually. This is a really simple film. It's about a killer that's after two girls that were just chilling at a lake. It is kind of a sorry imitation of Halloween. Like it's literally just nothing special, but it won some awards at the Nightmares Festival in 2023. So, you know, good for them on all technical levels. Like that was probably deserved, but it's a frustrating watch. I don't really recommend it. Ooh, but next up, guess who finally watched Brain Damage? Now, well, I had kind of seen like clips of this movie before. I think when I was staying with the crew for Never Hike Alone 2, they had this on in the background, or I don't know, it was on in the background somewhere. I had seen scenes of it before, okay? But let me tell you what it's about. Oh my god. So this movie follows this kid who meets this little like brain worm little critter, and it's kind of an allegory for drug addiction because this little critter like pumps this guy full of his juice, basically. It's sounding a lot more homoerotic than it is. Well, but it's an erotic film, actually. It is, and I'm not going to explain why. That can be something you discover for yourself. But obviously you can tell from the visuals and everything, this is just like peak 80s practical effect, peak 80s cult classic. The sense of humor and the pacing were just not for me though, so I didn't have a great time with it. I can highly recommend it to you though, because I really am into 80s cult horror classics. Some of my absolute favorites are Demons or Night of the Creeps. This one just like didn't quite live up to that standard that I've set. Not super duper for me, but I feel like I can recommend it. Finally, my last new watches of old horror, I finally watched Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which Alien Covenant I should have figured was part of the Alien franchise, but I don't even know if I had heard of it before. Prometheus, I had no idea that was part of the Alien franchise, and I want to talk about them so bad, but I am again gonna have to wait until I do that ranking. So I really hope that you stick around for that, because I have some severely unpopular opinions. If you couldn't tell with what I said about Alien Resurrection earlier, I just can't believe that somehow that trilogy flopped, and now Ridley Scott is probably never gonna get to finish it before he passes. That pisses me off. You know, that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, let's get into new releases. We have some juicy stuff. First up though is Trap, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because my dad and I released a whole like 35-minute episode on that over on the Patreon. I really just wish that movie had stuck the landing in the third act. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people are saying, because I think people just love to hate M. Night Shyamalan. They love it. But I don't really pay that any credence because, for example, the people that say, look, this is gonna be offensive, okay? A popular nickname people have coined for him is M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong. Racism. Anyway, Trap was so much fun. I feel like that movie was made for the girlies that love Taylor Swift, and I'm not even one of them, but like watching a concert film where the music was actually so good, I feel like his daughter's going places. I haven't yet, but there are so many songs from that movie that I do actually want to like download on Spotify. She's good. She's really good.
She's really good.
It just was so much fun. I wish the third act hadn't completely slowed down and made the pace come to a grinding halt, but M. Night Shyamalan is the dad of the year. Launching the directorial career of his other daughter with The Watchers, and then now this, like showing off his daughter's musical abilities. Shyamalan, I love you, okay? Next up, Cuckoo. This one I actually did a whole dedicated review on this channel, and I also did a little spoiler chat with my dad on the Patreon. That is a common theme for new releases, you might notice. I didn't have a chance to go rewatch Cuckoo in theaters. I really wanted to before talking about it again, because I do think that my second watch is gonna be a lot more enjoyable for me. I could be wrong about that, but that's just my suspicion. I might talk about that again in like another 2 years when I finally get to revisit it. Oh, what I will say though is that I love how Dan Stevens does the marketing for that film, or just like how he promotes it. He's so funny. He's so fun. I love him. Dan Stevens, I love you too. Next up, we can chat about this one, Strange Darling. Oh my god, finally. So Strange Darling, I'm not gonna give you a synopsis for. I'm just gonna let you make your little judgments and assumptions by some of the clips that I'm showing on screen right now. But that's all you get. That's it. This is a movie that you need to walk into so completely blind, all right? This movie flips every expectation you have on its head, and in one particular particular instance, I do think that it is a little bit troublesome. I can't get into that really without getting into spoilers, but let's just say it dips a little bit into gender politics in a way that I don't necessarily think is progressive. I didn't read the film as having negative intentions with that. Is it a little bit misguided? Maybe, yeah. But to me, I just read it as servicing yet another twist because this movie is loaded with them. Every time you think that you know what's going on, it's actually the opposite. There is so much whiplash, your neck might hurt by the end of your viewing experience, actually. I love this movie. I think it's gonna be very high in my ranking of horror movie releases from 2024. You mark my words, it might be starting out as a small cult classic right now. Someday, it's gonna find the wider audience, just believe me. Hopefully not before everybody starts spoiling everything though. Everyone's been really great about it on social media. Kyle Gallner has been promoting the hell out of it, obviously, because he's really proud of this movie he's in, as he should be. The performances are out of this world from him and Willa Fitzgerald. She's gonna win an Oscar someday, okay? And from what I can tell, nobody is like posting a ton of spoilers and like being an asshole about it. As a group project, everyone is actually carrying their weight. I don't think I've ever really experienced that before. So anyway, hopefully because of word of mouth, this movie will have expanded in its third weekend. If it's still out in a theater near you or in a theater within 40 miles of you, go see it. My review on Letterboxd just was simply see this movie by any means necessary, and I stand by that. Next up would be Alien Romulus, but again, I did a whole dedicated review to that movie. I talked about it for like almost a half hour, and then I also talked about it for about another 15 minutes on the Patreon with my dad. I loved Alien Romulus. I loved it so much. You should also get out and see that one. Next up, we have Skincare. This is a new Elizabeth Banks. It's listed as a psychological thriller, but now I feel kind of bad about actually putting this in the horror section because this movie isn't really a horror movie. Not really at all. I mean, it is based on real life events. I don't know how true to the story it is maintained, but it's about the skincare lady in Hollywood and how she thinks that her competition has started to stalk and harass her. It's well shot. It's a pretty movie. It's very well acted. I love evil Tom Holland. Okay, he's also in The Strangers Prey at Night, and that's probably still my favorite role of his, even though I know that he was in Top Gun Maverick, and yeah, whatever, that was a perfect film, but I love Strangers Prey at Night, so what are you gonna do? Elizabeth Banks was phenomenal in the movie. It's also probably her best performance that I've ever seen, and I love the way that she's branching out with her career because Pitch Perfect was, that's, you know, I loved the first movie when I was 14, but a lot of that movie is very low-hanging fruit, and rewatching it as an adult is like a little bit, I get secondhand embarrassment, you know? But then with Cocaine Bear, not a great movie, but I really enjoyed myself. I thought that was such a fun thing for her to do. And then for her to act in this movie and totally kill it, I'm loving the trajectory of her career right now. But the movie fell really flat. It just wasn't that good. And it's unfortunate because there are other actors in it that I really love, like Nathan Fillion is there, but it just was slow and it was boring. I don't know what else to say. The storyline is a little bit too simple and the characters just aren't quite interesting enough for me to ever want to go near that again. I'm gonna forget that I watched it in like a month from now, but I do want to see more stuff like that from Elizabeth Banks for sure. Also, it was produced by Logan Lerman, apparently. I saw his name in the opening credits and I was like, oh, I hope he's gonna be acting in this. He doesn't. But just such a random pairing. All these people working together. Just never thought I'd see the day. So that's one that you can skip, but one that you should not skip. Our final movie to talk about is Milk and Cereal. This is the found footage movie that is totally blowing up on YouTube right now. If you haven't heard of it, well, now you will. I don't really want to give any of the story away, but this just follows a group of YouTubers who specialize in pranking one another. So this is about how, obviously, you know, it's a horror movie, how one of the pranks goes horribly awry. Not going to say anything else besides that because we just were gifted with two incredibly twisty movies in the month of August, this and Strange Darling. This movie apparently was made for $800, so there are a lot of seams that you can notice. Maybe not all of the acting is super competent. Maybe you can't always suspend your disbelief, but the sheer creativity of this film is something that I just was not expecting from a YouTube found footage movie. The writing is especially exceptional. Like I said, I mean, you experience almost about the same amount of whiplash as you do with Strange Darling. Now, the first time that I watched it, because I did go back and rewatch it, I thought that they revealed one of their big cards a little bit too soon. And so I had kind of mentally checked out of the last 40 minutes of the movie. So like I really was only clocked into the first 20 minutes. Bad. Don't do that. So then this morning, like with my breakfast actually, I went back and I rewatched those last 40 minutes. And I had missed so much because I thought that that so much had already been revealed. And then I rewatched it and I was like, oh my god, like what was the matter with me? Because the movie had so much more in store for me that I just didn't quite grasp the first time around. Basically, just give this movie your full attention, okay? That's the moral of this story, because there are fun reveals from start to finish. This movie was shocking me from start to finish. Really exciting to see filmmakers do so much with so little. I'm really, really excited to see whatever they do next, and I really want to talk about it more, but just I can't get into spoilers with this one. Not even a little bit. So if you're watching me right now, then you really have no excuse. You can head over and watch that movie right now if you want to. I wish that was a more common occurrence. You know, there's a lot of short films on YouTube and I do enjoy watching them, but to get almost a feature-length movie for free on YouTube that everyone can enjoy, that is a beautiful thing. So what a great positive note to end this video today. If you enjoyed listening to me talk about movies and you're new here, then I highly recommend that you go back and watch, you know, my reviews of Alien Romulus, of Cuckoo, where I get a lot more in depth and we can talk about spoilers. Again, also for the 50th time, you can join the Patreon. There is a lot of bonus content over there, and a huge thank you to the patrons. They keep this channel afloat, and they also keep my second channel afloat. If you are a big physical media nerd, then definitely check out my second channel. I also post a lot of travel content over there. I like to see what physical media looks like in other countries, so I did a lot of hunting in the UK, and I also really enjoy going to filming locations. So I've released a lot of travel content this year as well. I got content coming out all over the place. Go check it out. You can also follow me on social media for more 24/7 coverage, I suppose. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I got you in the next one. Bye.